telephone boxes and mobile phones hidden in participants' jackets, or just simply talking to people, our work is always in some way concerned with communication. We like to create experiences with and not for people, and we don't always succeed in this, but this is almost always our starting point. We're interested in communication as a tool for free expression, as a way in which we try to understand ourselves and the world that we live in. That through communication we learn new things, and that we're directly involved in an exchange, and that there is no hierarchy in that exchange. I feel like as a company we're always trying to sort of correct the balance between saying too much and not saying enough, between imposing narratives and co-creating them in a moment with someone else. It tips far too one way, and it sort of becomes an exercise in story collection, the participant talking to the work and the work sending an automated response back, thank you very much. Or it falls to the other side and we've said far too much and the participant can't really get a word in. And this is something that we're really still trying to work out in our work. And I think it's, for us, how is the experience most like a conversation? So a comfortable exchange down the pub with a friend, or one of those rare times that you meet a fascinating stranger. So a lot of what we've been exploring in the kind of projects like Sea of Voices is how we can create this sense of conversation without the presence of a live performer. Is it possible to have a conversation with an object, with other participants taking part over a network, or in a collection of voices does a conversation emerge, and how is that presented or kept going? So I wanted to talk about 3 samples of our work, which might help with how we arrived at Sea of Voices, and in particular the Morse code boy. For those of you who don't know, at the end of the walk there's a boy floating out in the marina that you can text a message and it will flash it out for you then and there, and also later on at night. The first project I wanted to talk about was a project called Bring the Happy, which is an ongoing project that started about 2 years ago. And at its heart it is a collection or a mapping project, but it also exists as an installation, a map and a performance. It first started in Leeds, where for 2 months we collected people's happy memories of the city and its surrounding areas, and we mapped them onto a giant map and an online map, which is this one here. We were based in 2 stalls in Leeds Market, and we spent a lot of time just talking to people about happy memories. Lots about happiness, lots about why they were unhappy, and lots about why they thought the project was a really stupid idea. But more often than not, even those people who didn't really see the point in what we were doing would return a few days later, having thought about something they wanted to leave, or just to see how the map was coming along. So Bring the Happy is about communication in its essence, and I feel what first felt like a dialogue between us as 3 artists stood in the cold in the market talking to the public became a project that very much evolved into conversations across the city. So as the rods grew on the map, people would want to know other people's stories, perhaps out of curiosity, out of a desire in some way to communicate and understand the people that live around them day to day. And now the map, which houses just over 1,300 memories, feels to me like a live conversation. Although it is not, it is still a series of collective voices. But as you scan across, say, number 274, sat next to number 515, I start to hear a multitude of voices and conversations, and I hope that some of those people might be in person, only a street apart in real life. And what I like about sense of communication in the map as well is its timelessness. There are memories of memories dating back 100 years, some of them, and their honesty and their often mundaneness. They feel very alive to me, and they feel intended for other people to read them. They don't feel like confessions or secrets, but they feel addressed to others, designed to be read. A kind of weird tour guide for the city. I got drunk here, I fell in love here, remember that time in Hyde Park when it snowed. 1,000 conversations sort of all happening at once. Okay, so the second project I wanted to touch on is a project called Your Government Has Gone to Sleep. And it's a project we're relaunching at Future Everything next week. So this is a project that we originally launched in an area called Chapeltown in Leeds. So a bit of brief info on Chapeltown. Chapeltown is predominantly British, African, Caribbean, and is best known for its riots that happened in the mid-70s and through the 80s. It's still a place in Leeds where taxi drivers won't go, although there hasn't been a major disturbance there for many years. What is immediately interesting about Chapeltown to me is that it doesn't actually exist. It has no borders and it's not recognised by the post office or land registry. But yet it has an extremely strong identity within Leeds. So talking to residents in Chapeltown before we made this piece, we were told again and again that the sense of community isn't there anymore, that the city centre has spread in and kind of diluted what it used to be about. And how much of this is true, I can't really say, but it's certainly a feeling amongst people there. So we were asked to create a new piece of work for a festival called Under the Paving Stones to the Beach, which is by an organisation called East Street Arts, who have a gallery in Chapeltown and also live there. And it posed a really interesting and sort of uncomfortable question for us as a company. How do we talk to and about a place that we have no place in? We are actually one of a handful of artists that were actually from Leeds, and the majority weren't at all, but we still have no real connection to Chapeltown. So how do we talk to and about Chapeltown without it feeling like a study or sort of like an artist tourist? The project we created was a text message game, which over 1 week people could, if they wanted to, sign up to a network or movement through which they could communicate with each other under secret code names via text message. So to begin with, we put forward suggested themes for discussion, such as asking questions about where the heart of Chapeltown is, or making small manifestos for the town, or asking people to come up with small actions of change. And those were then appointed by the people taking part or other people taking part. And everyone live in the game would have their code name listed on kind of a central website. And by starting their text message with another person's code name, they could communicate with that person anonymously through the network. And similarly, if they wanted to communicate with the whole group at once, they would start their text message with the keyword group, and that would go out to everyone. So the project, I mention it because it became really interesting about 3 days in, when participants started communicating with each other without our voice present in it at all. And once they worked out the keyword system, people continued to give each other simple tasks to do through the day, such as talk to a stranger or hide 5 notes around the area or do a litter pick. They also began to feed back to each other on what they had done, its success or its failure. And what I like about this project is that the communication felt playful and fun, and also that participants gave momentum by which we became an equal voice in the work rather than a dominant one. We had just over 60 people play across the week, and I wondered with what momentum something like this, if it existed over a year or longer, whether those conversations might continue and sustain themselves. So our only live presence in this work was that we ran a pirate radio station out of a phone box on Chapeltown Road. It only had a throw of about 3 metres, so it was really a gesture in privacy rather than an actual one. But we also broadcast sort of all the chat and song suggestions of all the participants involved over the week. So with this project, sort of, the question I was asking about whether we need a live performer or live presence to create conversation, I think is quite inconclusive, because the network sort of grew and sustained itself, but yet we were still pushing this big red beacon of talk to me sort of up and down the street for the week of the festival. And I think we've attracted to the phone box as an object in the sort of the same way that we are attracted to Morse code in Sea of Voices. It's that they're both rarely used for communication anymore, and their original purpose is sort of defunct. So, communication in Sea of Voices. The idea of communicating with something out at sea, has been an idea we wanted to explore for a long time. A light in the distance that can call you back on the shore from miles away. A beacon of safety out in the water, or like a light on in a house that you can see from far out of sea in the middle of the night. A beacon of light as the oldest form of communication, making contact over a great distance. And we wanted the way that people interacted with the buoy to be simple and as much as possible universal. So that you didn't necessarily have to be in sight of it or in writing to make contact. So we decided upon text message. And it is interesting, I suppose, that for us, that in response to the text message, the buoy flashes in Morse code. It's an unreadable language. And I don't know whether we're using Morse in a nostalgic sense, and I suppose we're still trying to work that out. But what I think is interesting about it is that it was a communication that at its peak was really sophisticated and really, really important. So like the K6 phone box, no one uses it to make calls anymore, but perhaps there can be a different use for it. This is an organisation called FISTS, which actually I don't know what it stands for, but it's the International Morse Preservation Society. So I contacted these guys because I was interested in who was still using Morse and why. Because actually when we were out installing the buoy, one of the fishermen on the boat was really excited about the fact that we were using Morse code in kind of, a society that rarely does anymore. So the response I had from FISTS was that although Morse code is little used by commercial and military concerns these days, it is very much alive, well, and in use on a daily basis by radio amateurs, a number of whom are ex-professional Morse operators. Which I really like. I really like the idea that there is a bunch of people who still get together and use Morse on a daily basis to communicate, and that he, as he says, he thinks it is well and alive. Just its purpose is slightly shifted. I think for me, there's a joy in seeing something talk back to you, like waving to someone you don't know when you're on a boat or on a train. And similarly, here, your message sent through a small computer talking across the waves to another small computer, and that small computer declaring it to the world, or in this case the ocean, or simply repeating it back to you to tell you it understood. The messages for the buoy, for me, are sort of like that thing that you whisper under your breath when you don't think anyone's listening. And we've thought hard about whether we should do anything with the messages, and whether to display them for other people to read, like we did with Bring the Happy. And I like to think that some of the fishermen or some of the older generation of men on boats can still read it. But I think we're thinking a lot about actually what is the conversation and who is it for? Why send a message? Is it someone that you can no longer communicate with? This seems to be a theme for the short term that the project's been live. Is it secrets or things we sometimes want to say out loud but we can't or don't? I think for me there is an intimacy in the conversation with an object, like a buoy, and I'm not sure whether it needs broadcasting or translating, but rather flashing out forever. It feels like a private conversation with an undisclosed other, and although the curious part of me has really enjoyed reading the messages it receives, it on the most part feels like a very private conversation that I'm not part of anymore. I guess like the message in the bottle, we're not sure where it's going to wash up. So to try and answer my own question, I think a live presence is never totally removed from our work. It's probably why all three of us are still sat in Fabrica with it on a day-to-day basis. But I feel with this, and the buoy in particular, we've arrived with kind of a different form of communication in our work, and something that we didn't really expect. So I didn't know how to end this. So I thought I would just tell you an interesting fact that I found out when I was getting the license for the buoy, and that